My name is Wiltshire Johnson, and I am the Registrar of the Pharmacy Board of Sierra Leone, which happens to be the regulatory body, the national medicines regulatory body in that country. One safety issue or one safety incident in my life, 30 years ago is what spurred me on, because I remember my mother going to a pharmacy 30 years ago to buy a medicine for her low blood pressure, and she was given an antipsychotic drug. And I said to myself, this is something I need to do something about. And that's how I became a pharmacist, and that's how I went into drug safety. In a developing country setting, pharmacovigilance basically means ensuring the safety of patients when it comes to medicines use. And it not only encompasses the collection of adverse or identification of adverse events, it also ensures identifying those problems that ensure, one, medicines are available, two, that those medicines are of good quality, three, that those medicines are used properly, and four, identifying potential adverse events or adverse reactions to the use of those medicines. The biggest strategy we use at this point in time is to educate healthcare workers on the need to be vigilant and to report drug-related problems, in addition to doing root cause analysis as to why. Most often, from a developing point of view, if I were living in the US and a patient reported that I'm not feeling well, the first question I would ask is, describe how you're feeling. But in a developing country, if you told me that I took a drug and I'm not feeling well, the first thing I'll ask you is, where did you get it from? Who prescribed it? Have you used it as prescribed? Before even thinking of the side effects of the product. Because in our setting, the quality of the drug is key, and whether the right drug was prescribed, in addition to whether the correct product, the product was used at the right dose. So you cannot assume. So pharmacovigilance in our own setting makes healthcare workers a better professional. Because in order for you to be able to understand the side effect, you first of all need to verify whether the right product was used for the right disease at the right dose. So you have to go the extra mile to understand that. In public health emergencies, you would understand Ebola not being an exemption. You would understand that often there is the large-scale use of medical products, either experimental, which are new products, or existing products. And we all know that the current data we have on most medications is often limited by the data that is generated from clinical trials and spontaneous reports that we receive from the field once the product has been licensed. Now, in a public health emergency, it requires the large-scale deployment of previously known drugs, like, for example, in the case of malaria, or a new drug or vaccine, like in the case of Ebola. So a public health emergency presents a peculiar opportunity to be able to, one, learn more about a medicine through the science of pharmacovigilance in order to be able to identify possibly previously recognized side effects or previously unknown or recorded side effects. In addition to that, the deployment of pharmacovigilance and its various attributes gives confidence to the community where you have this emerging crisis, because people are people are guaranteed, or people are conscious of the fact that the pharmacovigilance system, which is more than often trusted, is there to ensure that should something go wrong, there is a fail-safe mechanism to identify the problem and ensure that management systems are put in place to address any potential crisis that may arise out of the use of an experimental product or an existing product.
It's a matter of choosing between the two devils, which would cause less harm. Deploying the product and getting the knowledge, or deploying the product, and harming a few people. At the end of the day, that's the principle of public health. Our job was to ensure that people tested these products in accordance with a defined protocol that was acceptable, and the fact that patients were aware that they were going to be given an experimental product, and they had a 50% chance of surviving if they didn't take the product, or they had a 50% chance of dying if they did. It was as simple as that, and we had to say it to them.
The best way is to tell people the truth. Let people know what are the potential threats and what are the potential opportunities, and then guide them in taking their decision. And be as transparent as possible, because, I mean, when it comes to the use of medicines, every individual, from a physiological standpoint, every individual would react to a medicine in a different way. But from a public health standpoint, or from a public health good, all right, the deployment of medicines is critical, either in the prevention, the cure, or eradication of disease. So the best you could do as a pharmacovigilance program manager or an officer or somebody working in pharmacovigilance is tell people the truth, do not hide the realities, and then explain to them what are the pros and cons, and look to the future as to ensure you put pharmacovigilance in place to monitor any potential problems that may arise. During the Ebola crisis, we were involved in the mass drug distribution of an anti-malarial medicine. And we all know that every medicine has its own side effects. There are some that have more than others. And the particular drug that we were using in Sierra Leone, the artesunate amodiaquine, presented side effects that mimics the Ebola. So on the one hand, people looked to the pharmacovigilance department and program with regards, should I take this medicine? Is it safe? And on the other hand, we were poised with the responsibility of monitoring the outcome and use of this medicine. So at a particular point in time, it became confusing as to, am I doing drug safety work or am I doing drug promotion work? You see, it is during that process that we realized the expanded role of pharmacovigilance. Because on the one hand, trying to convince the general public that yes, we are here, we will ensure that we monitor the safety of this product. But again, if something should go wrong, you need to let us know. It's almost like a mother and a child, trying to reassure that child who is trying to take her first step to walk in life. And at the same time, trying to convince that child that they should take the step and not worry about falling, because if you do fall, I will be there to catch you. And that was the most difficult part, wherein you're convincing people to take a drug that you know could cause potential safety problems, but at the same time reassuring them that if something should go wrong, you would be there. For me, as a regulator, when the outbreak started, one of the biggest things that worried us most was that this was a new disease, and as a regulator being responsible for the licensure of medicines in the country, we did not have any weapon against this disease. And out there were our friends, our classmates, our colleagues, fighting a battle with bare hands. And what touched us most was we did lose some of these people. A particular case in question was a classmate of mine, a schoolmate called Dr Sheik Umar Khan. He was the head of the hemorrhagic fever laboratory.
We tried explaining it as best as possible to our people, reaching them out through our outreach team, through their communities, through the paramount chiefs, religious elders, for them to understand that this disease is natural, it's nothing of a mystery, but simply is a disease that somebody can acquire. And if only they could listen appropriately to our advices, we could break the chain of transmission.
He was one of the first doctors to die, and that is what really created the wake-up call for people to respond in a massive way, especially our health authorities and other partners, because it was a very devastating situation where, and in fact, after he died, the entire hemorrhagic unit contracted Ebola and died. He as head doctor, the matron, and all the nurses that worked in that hemorrhagic unit died in the course of trying to save other people's lives. And there we were as regulators, responsible for ensuring that good quality medicines or some form of tool to fight a new disease should be available, and there was nothing we could have done. That was possibly the saddest point for me. I think pharmacovigilance needs to be given a higher priority list in terms of national security of governments. You see, because most often we are looking for the enemies in the wrong place. And the way I see it is not because I'm a pharmacovigilante, but I do believe that disease does kill more human beings in this world than any form of conflict, gang warfare, or even narcotics or drugs. But when you look at the resources being spent in national security defense systems, in terms of munitions, in terms of fighting illegal drugs or narcotics and cocaine, it's not comparable to the amount of money that is spent on research and the development of medical interventions, or even the development of medicines, and putting in place drug safety mechanisms to ensure that those medicines are safe. So I think that the issue of drug safety and pharmacovigilance, because diseases do kill more people than any other ailment or foe on in this earth, I think governments need to rethink their strategies and prioritize healthcare and the tools that they use to fight against these to ensure that they are safe. Because, I mean, maybe nobody has come up with the figures yet, but someday somebody will. But if you count the number of deaths from disease, it far surpasses the number of people who die from bombs, the number of people who die from guns, or the number of people who die from heroin and cocaine. So we really need to get a global strategy to address the issue of developing drugs to fight disease, and at the same time putting in place the appropriate resources to ensure that those medicines or drugs that are developed are safe for human consumption.